Someone.
Call to order, councillors. It is 9 a.m. Thank you. So just while we're getting comfortable, please turn your phones and devices to silent. Thank you. Today's meeting has been arranged to accommodate the current health orders in relation to COVID-19 response in New South Wales. So this meeting will be conducted as a hybrid meeting, and we have some councillors joining us by Zoom. And the gallery is limited to, I think, 19 people. And we have one person in the gallery this morning. So welcome. Welcome everyone to the September 2021 Kempsey Shire Council meeting. For anyone joining us online for the first time, our council meetings are live streamed to allow people to observe council in the decision-making process. It is a regulation requirement to advise everyone present that attendance is taken to be consent to the possibility that your image and or voice may be recorded and broadcast to the public via our live stream. And any other visual and or sound recordings of this meeting require prior permission, and the decision to allow must be a unanimous decision of council. Council will break at the appropriate time to allow councillors and staff for a short break, and that is generally around 10:30. In chambers today, we have Councillor Dean Saul, Sue McGinn, Ada Shields, Anthony Patterson, Mark Baxter, and Ashley Williams. Joining us by Zoom, we have Councillor Horval and Councillor Morris. We are joined by the Director of Operation and Planning. No, we aren't. But he will be arriving soon, which is Director Robert Fish, Director Corporate and Commercial, Stephen Mitchell, our General Manager, Craig Milburn, our Manager Governance, Dil Thorogood, and Melanie Pedersen from Governance Team. So welcome, councillors, General Manager, Executive Team and staff, and good morning to anyone that is joining us by live stream this morning. And to our one person in the gallery, welcome, Paul. Reminder, councillors, voting will be a call for any dissent votes. Non-dissent vote is an affirmative. Abstaining vote is a record for a vote against. If there's no dissent votes, the motion will pass unanimously. And don't forget to please activate your microphones when you have been acknowledged to speak. And be aware that even though this is a hybrid meeting, we do have the ability to move into workshop if agreed by the majority of councillors. So to formally begin, please refer to item 1, which is our opening prayer, as we normally begin with the prayer. Dear Lord, help us in our deliberations today so that our decisions will be for the greater good for the whole of the Kempsey Shire. Amen. And Kempsey Council acknowledges the land of the Thunguddi-Dunguddi Nation. We pay respect to the elders past and present. We acknowledge the role of emerging leaders to continue to guide us in the future. We acknowledge the stolen generations and the need to change practices to be inclusive. This land always was and always will be Thunguddi-Dunguddi land. There's no apologies or leave of absence from councillors today. Item number 4 is the confirmation of minutes from the 17th of August meeting. That's been moved by Councillor Patterson. Councillor Horval has his hand up. Do I have a seconder for those minutes? Thank you, Councillor McGinn. Yes, Councillor Horval.
Madam Mayor, I was trying to move it. I didn't know I had to call out. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So that's been moved and seconded. Is there any dissent? There's no dissent. They have been carried. Thank you, councillors. Any disclosures of interest? Thank you, Councillor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My conflict of interest is non-significant, non-pecuniary on item 11.1, as I'm known to one of the parties.
Thank you. There's no more conflict of interest. Items passed by exception, which is item numbers. There is a recommendation for item. Yes, Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to withdraw 2 items, please. 8.1 and 9.5, and also would like 11.1 withdrawn. I'm sorry, that's 3. I apologise. 8.1, 9.5, and 11.1.
Is there any other withdrawals or questions? I haven't got a mover at this point in time.
Second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson, and seconded by Councillor Saul. Is there any? So what we have in front of us now is exception is 9.4 carryover and revotes, 9.6 CLYDE Street car park, 9.7 change of council meeting dates, 9.8 the annual financial statements, 9.9 the statements of cash and investment, and 11.2 which is the supply and deliver of pavement materials, and 11.3 the Anderson Quarry sale of land.
Madam Mayor.
Questions?
Question, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Horval.
On 9.5, carryover and revote budget, please. I looked at the attachment, and it's a bit concerning, and I'd like to, maybe it can explain to me, but quite a few of the revotes are for vehicles and trailers that haven't been ordered in the previous financial year or haven't yet been delivered. And I did a quick calculation and it comes out at $1.1 million worth of vehicles that haven't been ordered, vehicles and trailers, I should say. Is there some system that the orders of these vehicles could be put in place that they happen earlier in the financial year so that we don't have to have revotes on vehicle acquisitions? Is there a particular reason why these have to be carried over? Could there be a process that puts it in place that this doesn't happen and we save having $1 million in revotes?
General Manager.
Mr. Mitchell. Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Horval, there's quite a lot of delays on a lot of vehicles at the moment, and that's obviously been impacting in terms of the delivery of some of these vehicles. We operate our fleet based on a replacement schedule, so we'll only generally order replacement vehicles when they're due to be replaced with an appropriate lead time. There are obviously extenuating circumstances at the moment which are causing some of the delays. We wouldn't want to be ordering them all too far in advance, and the situation that's been encountered, I guess, in terms of this year, which I think is obviously not just contained to our business, but has been an impact across the nation generally, is sort of slightly unusual, I guess, and so that's the reason that there are more vehicles than what you would expect to see in the revote paper for this year. That said, all of those vehicles come out of our fleet reserve, so it really has minimal impact. The cash is sitting in a fleet reserve, and so whether it was spent prior to 30 June or in this year, that cash would still be used for the purposes of purchasing those vehicles.
Yeah, but that would mean, Director Fish, that it still has to come to a revote. And what we're doing now, the point that I was trying to make, is it possible to have some sort of process that makes it ordered earlier?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to answer that, Councillor Horval, that a lot of these vehicles have been actually ordered. They just haven't been received and therefore paid for because of the delays in the delivery from vehicles coming from overseas.
Right. My other question on that is one item only, and it's only $14,000.68. It's a revote for a grant for the International Day of People with Disabilities, which is in December. Why wasn't it spent in December last year? Why does it have to be carried over?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. My understanding, Councillor Horval, is that that event wasn't able to go ahead because of COVID restrictions, and therefore that money's just been carried forward.
It'll be carried over to the day in December this year, would it? Is that the idea?
Yes, that would be that's the plan. Obviously, any decisions around holding any events are subject to the public health order that would be in place at that time.
Thank you very much for those answers.
We have a recommendation. Is there any further questions? Is there any dissent on the recommendation? There's no dissent. That has been carried. We move on to item 8.1, which is the local traffic committee minutes. Do I have a mover? Councillor Holbrook, are you moving it?
Moving it, Madam, with Mayor, with a slight amendment.
Do I have a seconder? I'll need to know. Excuse me. I'll need to know what the amendment is.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll forward the amendment to Mr. Thorogood now. 8.1. But I would like to add, having read the minutes, it tells us that there's going to be a change in the disabled parking spot in Gregory Street, Southwest Rocks, and it's going to have the actual position in the street now changed over to a police vehicle parking place, and then council's going to investigate where to put a replacement disabled parking placement. So I'm just adding, we add to 8.1, the resolution of establishing a new disabled parking placement in Gregory Street be implemented before converting the present one to a police vehicle parking space. It seems obvious that.
Point of order, can you change the minutes?
I think it has to be referred back to the local traffic committee. Is that correct? If council decides that that's what they want to do.
Well, through you, Madam Mayor, just to, I guess, provide a bit of context, and there is some information there in the minutes. The disabled space has been recognised as being as very low usage, and obviously, if it was of much higher usage, then the importance of an alternative spot immediately would obviously would have been part of the discussion at the traffic committee and part of the original recommendation to that committee. So, as I understand it, would be the establishment of the parking for the police there, and then our traffic engineer will look at alternatives that are available for a disabled space, and it could be potentially something that we can put in place quite quickly.
Do I have a seconder? It's lapsed due to no second.
Madam,
Yes,
I would consider seconding if it was changed not to say that, but to say that we asked the traffic committee to investigate such an issue.
Which is what they're doing.
Well, that's not what was stated for it. Wasn't stated forwarding it back to the traffic committee. Well, if that's what we're doing, I'll second it then.
Madam Mayor, point of order, are we not micromanaging the traffic committee? This is the business of the traffic committee and reporting back to us.
Councillor McGinn, that was neither a question nor part of the debate. So,
Can I speak to it, Madam Mayor?
Question. It was a point of order, actually, which I'm not going to, which is what you said, which I'm not going to uphold, because you can either choose to be part of the debate that or not. So what we have in front of us is a amendment, is a resolution with an amendment, but I don't believe, Councillor Morris, we have a seconder. We don't have a seconder.
May we please clarify, are we talking about Memorial Avenue or Gregory Street was mentioned?
Memorial Avenue.
Thank you.
No, Madam Mayor, it's Gregory Street where they're putting the police station. 17 Gregory Street.
Where's the... Councillor, hang on a moment. Councillor Shields, your question.
My understanding was the new police station was in Memorial Avenue.
The new police station is in Memorial Avenue.
Madam Mayor.
That's where it is. That's where I've seen it. Yeah. Councillor, we can't...
It's not.
We haven't got a resolution on the books, a recommendation on the books here.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move the recommendation as is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Second.
Because that
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
was lapsed due to no seconder. Yes, Councillor Hawthorne.
Madam Mayor, I was accepting, and it wasn't asked, was accepting the Councillor Morris's idea that it be referred back to the traffic committee and be put into my added point to the resolution. So I'm still thinking that I'm moving this resolution.
So, Councillor Morris, yours was an amendment to what we didn't have as a seconder.
What it was Bruce said, if that wording was in it, he would second it.
Okay.
Those accepted it. So it did the legitimate
Motion. Yes, correct.
And Councillor Patterson's would actually be an amendment.
Yes, I've got. We all.
Madam Mayor, I actually stated that the new stated that that's what the motion was. Then I said therefore I seconded it because you said that's what it was, not what was read out. It had been changed. I don't know what's happening, but you stated that it was changed to be a referral back to the Traffic Committee when I said I would second it if that was the case, and you said that's what we are discussing. So are we discussing that or aren't we discussing that?
No, that's exactly what we're discussing, Councillor Morris, and that is what is on the screen. Yep.
That's what I've moved, Madam Mayor. Could I speak to my motion now, please?
Are you happy with that, Councillor Morris?
Yeah, but is it Gregory Street or is it Mitchell Avenue? We need to make sure we get that correct.
Google Maps shows it to be Gregory Street.
It's Memorial Avenue.
Can I just have somebody?
So, Madam Mayor, the actual minutes of the meeting in the attachment, the actual title of 4.1, the police vehicle parking, Memorial Avenue, Southwest Rocks, and all through that discussion it talks about Memorial Avenue.
So, Councillor Holby, you're disputing that the police station is in Memorial Avenue and you're under the impression it is somewhere else?
I thought it was, Madam Mayor, I thought it was in Gregory Street, so I'll just quickly check on Google Maps. I could be totally wrong. I do apologise if I am. It's just my reading of it.
There's actually
read Memorial Avenue.
This is the new police station, Councillor Hawble.
The new one, yes. And I stand corrected. It is Memorial Avenue. I got it. It was in Gregory Street, and it's my mistake, Madam Mayor. Could I correct that and make it Memorial Avenue, please?
Yes, certainly, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just quickly, my point in speaking to my motion is that the
Councillor Hawble. Councillor moved an amendment after.
I haven't spoken to my motion yet, Madam Mayor.
Yes, you may, but just so everybody is clear where we're at. You moved an motion.
Yes.
With addition to it,
yes.
Which changed to incorporate what Councillor Morris has indicated would be acceptable to him, and you said yes, you would accept that. So now we have the motion in front of us, which has been moved by you and seconded by Councillor Morris. Councillor Patterson has moved an amendment that says that the council notes the minutes and adopts the recommendations. So you may speak to your motion, and then we go straight into the amendment.
That's if it doesn't get carried. But thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I understand that. So I'm actually moving that we consider the disabled people first. And the Traffic Committee, the Kempsey Shire Council Traffic Committee, is an advisory body to council, and they recommend things to us, and we're accepting those recommendations in this. And it says adopts the recommendations. If councillors find something in those recommendations that need tweaking or referring back, we can do that because they are our committee. They refer information to us for affirmation. Their decision is to send it to council for adoption, and that's what we are doing here today. And I'm actually saying we should prioritise replacing the disabled parking spot before we remove the present one and find a place very quickly. It shouldn't be that hard to say these two parking spots here are now a disabled parking spot. There are parking spots towards the shops just to the south of the new police station, and it wouldn't be hard to say that's where the parking, disabled parking could go. So it would be very expedient to have that in place before you put the police vehicle parking space in. And that's why I'm thinking it's a simple change, and we're looking after the disabled people in our community who need a place to park. and we should always prioritise their convenience, and that's why I think we should make sure that that happens first before we put the police vehicle parking spot in.
Thank you, Councillor. So, Councillor Patterson, you moved an amendment. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Thank you, Councillor McGinn. Do you want to speak to your amendment, Councillor?
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. As an actual member of the Traffic Committee, I want to reiterate that the disability parking is a priority in our committee to look for alternative for locations and for use, and to be told that it's not a priority, I refute that. Where I'd like to move the minutes as standing, as the Traffic Committee has deliberated, not only through the meetings that I attend, but also prior to the meetings by council staff. And this is not just something that's thrown together in 5 minutes, and that our staff has done a great job, and we always consider disability in our parking zoning.
Councillor McGinn?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a question to the General Manager. Mr General Manager, could you please explain how the working relationship works between Council and the Traffic Committee, please?
Through Madam Mayor, the Traffic Committee isn't a committee of council. It's actually belongs to Transport New South Wales. We have representation on that committee. They do make their minutes available to us to adopt, and we do have the ability to refer matters either directly to them or back to them as the motion there. We actually have that ability, but it is not our committee.
Thank you, General Manager. I have a question to the Director. Director Fish, these process is already in play. My understanding is I also attended that committee meeting, and my understanding would be that the looking for the parking place for the disabled is already underway, and by fiddling around now saying no, we want to do this would just delay or would be of no value.
Through you, Madam Mayor, if you look at point 2 of the committee recommendation of that item from the minutes, it actually reads, Council to investigate suitable sites within Memorial Avenue for replacement of the disabled parking bay and report further to the committee for advice. So it's something that's in train, obviously.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Is there any other questions on the amendment? Councillor Horval?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Oh, Councillor Morris.
Madam Mayor, just a question to the General Manager, which will probably be referred to Director Fish. Would it be possible or would it be prudent to consider not necessarily changing, but the way that's worded in point 2 is a report further to the committee for advice. The committee normally meets every 3 months. So when is the next committee meeting? And would it, if there's a site determined earlier, could an out of session meeting be held to do that? Or is it intended to wait until the next routine meeting to consider a revised disabled parking spot?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the next committee meeting I think is at the start of December or thereabouts. But yeah, it's quite common that items will be dealt with out of or between meetings where they need to be, or there's an opportunity. So that's certainly something that will be considered once it's been assessed.
I'll reply. Yep.
Any further discussion? I put the amendment. All in favour? Any dissent on the amendment?
No. One. Yep.
Councillor Horval. Because it's a hybrid meeting, I'd really like to see that the names are up and on how it was voted. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. We now
the motion.
This becomes the motion. We're now voting on the recommendation, which is The amendment that Council notes the minutes and adopts the recommendation of the Local Traffic Committee held on the 7th of September 2021. Is there any dissent on the recommendation? There's no dissent. That's been carried. Thank you, councillors.
Madam Mayor, could I just ask a question, if I may, please, before you move on? The screens are really tiny, the text, and I'm struggling to actually read. The font is really small.
Thank you.
So if that could be adjusted.
It's just been, it magically has just been increased.
Without the screen, it's very difficult to follow.
Yes, I agree. Thank you, Councillor McGinn. We now move on to item 9.1, which is the election of deputy mayor. I'll now move over to the general manager. First of all, I won't move over to the general manager. The recommendation is that council elects a deputy mayor for the balance of this term of council and conducts the election if required for the position of deputy mayor by open voting. There is a recommendation. Do I have a mover? Was that you, Councillor Williams? Thank you, Councillor Williams. Seconded by Councillor McGinn.
Madam Mayor, I have an amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Horval.
Madam Mayor, my amendment, which I have sent through to Mr. Thorogood, reads, where's it gone? That council, elects a deputy mayor for the balance of this term of council, and 2, conducts the election, if required, for the position of deputy mayor by secret ballot using secure emails such as Adobe Sign to the returning officer.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Morris. Yes.
There we go.
Yes. Do you?
Madam Mayor, may I speak to my amendment, please?
Whoever moved the motion needs to have the right to speak first. Thank you, Councillor Williams.
I reserve my right.
You reserve your right. Thank you. Yes, you may.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm want to quickly talk to you about what I perceive to be democracy, and it's been a long history of changing democracy to make Australia and possibly New Zealand the leading democracies in the world for balloting and finding out information to elect officials at all levels of government. We have secret ballots in Australia for the simple reason we want the person to give their real thoughts on who they should elect, and to do that, it's a secret one. Originally, when we first had the first elections in Australia, it was a gathering at outside the local pub, and people put their hands up, and there was all sorts of intimidation. And I'm still of the opinion that a secret ballot is possible. I must concede to you that the Office of Local Government has said that it must be open voting if there's a hybrid meeting. And I understand why they've said that, possibly because they would not have thought through or understood that we can have secret voting through the secure email system such as Adobe Sign. We all recently had to sign declarations, and they were sent out by Mr. Thorogood, and we signed them and had to return them. It's a secure way of voting as well, and we would have to do that, and it might take some time if we adopt my amendment, but it would certainly give people a chance to reflect on who they're voting for. It would certainly enable people to decide whether that the person they're voting for stands up for democracy, doesn't talk over people, makes sure that the elected person is the person they really want, someone they believe that can do the job. Now, I'm also telling you now that I'm standing for Deputy Mayor for the simple reason that we should have a choice in a ballot, not just unanimously.
We conduct the election, or whether it's by secret ballot or not.
That's what I'm saying, Madam Mayor. I'm saying as a secret ballot, we should be able to determine, if we've got more than one candidate, whether we vote for one person or the other. And I am a person who has a long history of being inducted into the fields of democracy being a returning officer at federal elections since 1983. I've done lots of counting. I did lots of...
Councillor Holden, this is about you. We want to go back to what we're discussing here, which is whether we conduct an election,
Yes, and
in there, and whether we use the secret ballot. That is what we're discussing. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Madam Mayor. I was just talking about the secret ballot and why I am convinced that secret ballot is the way to go to select the best person for the people who are the electors. And a secret ballot is something that I know about counting ballots. I've done the returning officer thing many times. So I'm saying the secret ballot is the best way, and we can do this via a Davies sign to the returning officer. And it's only two of us having to do that, and it wouldn't take very long for us to do that, and we would have a result. So I'm suggesting that we all send an email to the returning officer, and that's what would happen if council adopts my amendment.
Just excuse me, Councillor Hall, have you got information that we don't know? You said two of us. I don't believe that the nominations have been declared yet.
Right, there could be 5, Madam Mayor. That's right. I'm sorry. I apologise. I'm stand corrected. I apologise for that. Yes, so a secret ballot would certainly give us a definitive result with no one feeling they've got to vote for the team. They can vote for what they think is the best person. And that's why I suggested this change.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Your point of order.
He's implying that we're not making any...
I can't hear you. If you just, when you're speaking, if you pull your...
Councillor Hall was implying that we don't make an informed decision about who we would like individually as the Deputy Mayor, and saying that we're voting as a team. I take offence to that.
Thank you, and I'll uphold your point of order. Would you like to withdraw that statement, Councillor Horville, and apologise?
Madam Mayor, I don't know why I need to apologise, but I will, because I don't see that I've offended anyone. If I've offended Councillor Williams, I apologise to him. All I know is that I'm saying a secret ballot is a better way.
Call the point of order, Councillor.
Beg your pardon, Madam Mayor, I couldn't hear you.
I also called the point of order at the same time. She's also feels offended.
Who does, Madam Mayor? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
So if you don't apologise to Councillor Williams, you'll need to also consider apologising to Councillor McGinn.
Madam Mayor, I apologise to all councillors if they feel offended by me saying that a secret ballot is a better way. No, I'll rephrase that, Madam Mayor. I was incorrect in the way I phrased that. I'd like to apologise, Madam Mayor, for implying that anyone on council is working as a team. I withdraw that imputation, and I apologise to everyone.
Thank you. Councillor Morris. But before you do, we have...
Madam Mayor's question.
Yes.
It's a question that might lead to a change, and I'd hate to think that it could happen. But we've said elect a deputy mayor for the balance of this term of council. That's presupposing that COVID doesn't blow up and we don't go beyond September next year. I'd hate to think that that would be the case, but hopefully there will be an election on the 4th of December, but we don't know for sure. So should we reterm that to say for the future 12 months or the balance of this term of council?
Yes, I'm just going to refer to the General Manager. Yeah. There was
that would happen, but
Deputy Premier, and there seemed to be no indication that there wasn't going to be an election.
Certainly, through you, Madam Mayor, speaking to the soon-to-commence Secretary of the Department of Primary Industry and Environment, who is oversees obviously local government, Kristen Fishburn, she's made it very clear that to change the date from the 4th of December requires legislation. There is no legislation before council. The election will proceed on the 4th of December. The Electoral Commission have indicated they can't change that either. The Electoral Commission have put in place a range of things and have changed requirements around postal voting and pre-polling to allow anyone to undertake both of those. And they've also allowing expanding the e-vote for this election as well. So it's pretty unforeseeable that we would proceed beyond the 4th of December. Changing it to the words Councillor Morris has suggested, there's no harm in doing this, it's not going to hurt anything, but it's highly, very, very unlikely that we would actually go beyond the 4th of December.
I know it's very unlikely, but
can I just clarify something? The wording says elects a deputy mayor for the balance of this term of council. So that could be any time.
Yes, what Councillor Morris is highlighting is should the election come off again, should the election not proceed before September next year, which would be 12 months, which is the term in the Act, that would take you beyond the level. That would take you beyond the time you're actually allowed, because the deputy mayor is only appointed for 12 months. So that's what Councillor Morris is highlighting. Yeah.
Already.
Yeah, it's the term beyond that. Teams that have actually tied in this meeting.
We're
just turn the volume right down. Yeah. Yeah.
So we have an amendment.
it wasn't an amendment, it was a question. Should we consider capping it at 12 months if the unthinkable happens?
No. So you're not changing this amendment at all? You just asked the question and you are satisfied with the answer?
Should we consider it? Or if we don't do it and the unthinkable happens, we could always change it, I suppose, anyway, couldn't we?
Correct. Okay, so we have an amendment. Is there any dissent on the amendment? 8. The amendment, I'll wait for it to come up. The amendment has been lost. We go back to the original motion. I'm just waiting for the original motion. Councillor Williams, do you wish to speak to your original motion? You did have the right to.
I don't think I need to, Madam Mayor. It's pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Is there any?
Madam Mayor, point of order.
Yes, Councillor Hawthorne.
Sorry to interrupt you, Madam Mayor, but, in the point of order minutes that were just brought up on the screen and have gone again, I believe that the fact that I apologise should be recorded.
Yeah, Councillor Hall, what's taken up on the screen is the minute taken as shorthand. The actual recording will be reviewed and they'll be reworded before minutes are issued.
Thank you very much.
Okay, is there any dissent on the motion? There's no dissent, it's been carried. Thank you, councillors. I will now hand over to the General Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, we've received 2 nominations. Both forms are completed with 2 signatures, or a minimum of 2 signatures as required. The first nomination received was for Councillor Patterson. The second nomination received was for Councillor Hallville. As per the council resolution, this will be undertaken by a show of hands. As the custom and practice here is, we take these in the order they are actually received. So we will look for votes for Councillor Patterson first. With this, we'd like you to clearly show your hand. So if you could put that up. So we're voting for Councillor Patterson to be appointed as the Deputy Mayor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7 votes. Given those numbers, I will now declare Councillor Patterson elected as the Deputy Mayor.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Mr. General Manager, we're supposed to ask who voted for Councillor Hallville. It's in the form.
Yeah, Councillor Hallville, I haven't actually finished yet. So the second vote is for Councillor Hallville. Those who are voting for Councillor Hallville.
Thank you. I just wait for that to come up on the screen. And in the meantime, like to ask Councillor Patterson if he would like to say anything and say congratulations, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, my fellow councillors, for electing me to this position again, and which I do hold very dearly to my heart, with and carry the position with much respect that it deserves, and wanting to reiterate to you, all my fellow councillors and council staff, that I am still the same person and I'm still approachable, and I look forward to the future term that we have left in our council, which may be till December. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson.
Madam Mayor?
Now move on to, yes, Councillor Horval.
I'd like to congratulate my fellow councillor Patterson for his election.
Thank you, Councillor Horval. We will now move on to 9.2, which is the Local Government New South Wales Conference selection for voting delegates. The recommendation is that Council nominate the Mayor and 2 other councillors as voting delegates for the 2021 LGA New South Wales Conference, and then determine the 2 other voting delegates.
Madam Mayor?
Would you like to move that?
Madam Mayor, I'd move that.
We just need to move it first. Yep. You're moving it?
I'll second that.
And Councillor seconded by Councillor Williams. Is there any dissent on what the recommendation is?
Madam
Yes,
Mayor, move a slight amendment. I think it might be accepted by the mover.
Yes, Councillor.
From the body of the report, it actually says that delegates to the special conference and notice of motions will be determined by the new council at their first meeting in January 2022. I think that should be part of our recommendation, Madam Mayor, but it's actually what's in the body. We're just saying that that's what will be happening in the January 22 council meeting.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd like to explain what this report actually does is just nominate the Mayor and the 2 councillors for the voting delegates for the 2021 conference, and then determine the 2. There will be a further report coming to council, to the new council, to actually address the issues in the rest of the report.
Top of your report.
Yeah. So it's only dealing with between now and that conference.
Madam Mayor, as discussion here, I'd like to move a nomination of councillors.
First of all, we need to resolve the recommendation before we go into voting. Okay. And at this point, we have an amendment or a suggested amendment from Councillor Horval that he wants to incorporate into this motion, which the General Manager has indicated this is only for the voting delegates for 2021. Councillor Morris?
Just a question, Madam Mayor. What is going to be the forum? Are the 3 voting delegates going to get together in the chamber like happened last year for this annual meeting? Or is it going to be separate with each person individually streaming in? And if it is a collective, will other councillors be able to attend without voting rights to view the presentation of the annual report and the financial reports?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the format will be really determined by the current public health order at the time. It's very hard to know. If the place is open and the delegates wish to get together and other councillors wish to attend, they are more than able to do that, and we can live stream it as we did last time. If the health order restricts that, then we'll have to follow what the health order actually requires. The meeting itself is a very, very short meeting. They're only expecting it to last 30 minutes or less, and dealing with very few items, which is really just the statutory things they have to cover as at the conference.
Mr. General Manager, another quick question. The voting delegates, because I believe that the voting for board positions on New South Wales is also going to be held prior to the full conference. I'm not 100% sure, but that's going to be done by mail. So these voting delegates will also participate in that procedure?
That's correct.
Yeah, so the voting delegates will also vote for the positions on the board and also for the president of the association.
Correct.
At a later event.
It's actually by postal vote being run.
Yeah, after this, yeah.
So we do have a resolution. We have a motion in front of us, but we also have had, which hasn't been seconded or incorporated from Councillor Horval, the amendment. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? I don't have the words for that amendment in front of me.
It's right from the body of the report, Madam Mayor, and it reads, delegates at the special conference and notices of motion will be determined by the new council at their first meeting in January 2022. It's already there, it's just outlining what's going to happen further down the track with the Local Government New South Wales Conference. Part 2.
Yes, Councillor.
I was going to say,
sorry, yes, Manager.
Just flagging, it's only a minor issue, but we actually haven't resolved to have that January 2022 meeting yet. So putting it in this motion will preempt. Actually, sorry, it went through in the block, didn't it? Yeah. Sorry, we have resolved. My apologies.
Thank you. Councillor Morris, you had your light on? No?
No.
So we have an amendment. I don't have a seconder for the amendment.
Well, Madam Mayor, I didn't move it as an amendment. I thought it could just be moved in by Councillor Patterson if he accepted it. If he doesn't accept it, it's not the end of the earth.
No, okay. All right, so we have a resolution. We have a motion in front of us. Do I have any dissent on this motion? Yes. Do I have any dissent on it? There's no dissent. It's been carried. I now go over to what councillors need to do. I'll now go over to the General Manager to call for any nominations for the delegates.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We are after 2 other voting delegates for this. My understanding is that Councillor Patterson is unable to attend as the Deputy Mayor, which would be our normal practice here. Councillor Patterson, you've got nominations.
I've got 2 nominations. Thank you, Mr. General Manager. I nominate Councillor Dean Saul and Councillor Sue McGinn. An obvious fact that the Mayor is the other.
Yeah. Do we have any other nominations? No other nominations I see, therefore I'll declare both of those as the voting delegates. That's Councillor Saul and Councillor McGinn.
Thank you, councillors. That's item 9.2. We now move on to item 9.3, which is the questions on notice, resourcing and financial impacts. There is a recommendation.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move a procedural motion, please.
Just a moment. We need a procedural motion first. Yes, councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The procedural item is this item be deferred until the February 2022 council meeting for determination by the newly inducted council.
Thank you. I need a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Oh, am I speaking? Yes, thank you. This is a very big change in our custom and practice for council. And near the end, we've only got 2 more meetings to go of this present council. We're changing how council meetings will operate. And I think how it operates should be determined by the new council. And so I think this procedural motion puts it in the hand of the new council, whoever's elected, and they can determine whether the questions with notice be determined or not, or put on the floor of the council meeting, or put in writing 8 days out before a council meeting. So I'm suggesting that we have this left to the newly elected people. And that's, I think, it's a straightforward, very simple procedural motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. . Thank you. Councillor, do I have any dissent on the procedural motion? Thank you, Councillor. That procedural motion has been lost, so we...
Madam Mayor, could I get the wording correct on my procedural motion, please? It's not what I moved.
Can you repeat the wording, Councillor Horville? You didn't send that one through and we didn't catch the full wording.
Well, it's showing that it's gone to you now, but okay. This item be deferred until the February 2022 council meeting for determination by the newly inducted council.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Sargent.
Do we have you've got your light on, Councillor? Yeah, we voted on that, but Councillor Patterson, you have your light on. Oh, you moved the motion, Councillor McGinn.
And I
seconded by Councillor.
Just to clarify, move the motion for the point of discussion.
Oh, for point of discussion, Councillor Saul. Okay. Yes, gentlemen.
I just wish to make a few comments by way of introduction to this report and to clarify some of the misunderstandings that have been circulating around the community, around the report and its recommendation. The report's been placed on the agenda due to the number of requests from councillors about what action can be taken in relation to the way the questions have been progressing over the past year or so. Many of you as councillors have either asked me directly or have raised questions during the council meeting about the questions being asked and the process that is being used. When I commenced here 3.5 years ago, this practice was in place. Slightly different to this, but similar. It was outside of the code of meeting practice at that time. However, I agreed to allow it to continue. As pointed out in the report, as time has progressed, this practice has changed, and now, in my view, it is out of hand and detrimental to the flow and focus of council meetings. The report is simply recommending that council follow its own code of meeting practice, which allows for ways for questions to be asked. The adoption of the recommendation or something similar will ensure council is operating in line with its own code of meeting practice based on the Office of Local Government requirements. The code requires formal notice to be given for questions so that the public are aware of the matters being discussed at a council meeting. Formal meetings of council are required to give adequate notice of the business being considered. The report highlights that our current practice does not conform with this requirement. The recommendation is not stopping councillors from asking questions. Councillors are provided with numerous ways in which they can ask questions in a public forum setting. They include things such as notices of motion and questions on notice. Additionally, councillors can ask questions at councillor briefings or directly to myself or to the directors. Questions can also be asked on specific projects when they are presented in reports such as the quarterly budget review and our 6 monthly progress reports. When an item of business is on the councillor meeting agenda, councillors are free to ask questions and debate the matter at the council meeting as they currently do. As you can see, councillors will continue to be able to request information on the progress of projects and other council activities in a public forum setting, which will maintain the transparency of the organisation. Staff will still be required to provide answers to questions through the proper channels in line with the Code of Meeting Practice requirements. This is not a ban on asking questions. It is simply ensuring questions are asked the way required by the Code of Meeting Practice. It is not seeking any change to the current Code of Meeting Practice. It is simply recommending that we follow the Code of Meeting Practice. The flow of a meeting makes it virtually impossible to deem a question contrary to the Code of Meeting Practice or out of order as it is asked. By the time it is considered, we're already often 2 or 3 questions down the track. It's already been asked, it's public, it's streamed, and it's recorded. The recommendation does not intend to hide anything or compromise transparency from the community. Nor will its adoption result in any reduction in transparency or the ability of councillors to ask questions. A number of you at times expressed concerns that council is not following its Code of Meeting Practice. The adoption of this recommendation or something similar will ensure that council is following its Code of Meeting Practice. Councillors have a right to ask questions, and that's something that I continually advocate and support. However, we need to ensure those questions are asked in the right process, and that is to follow what is in the Code of Meeting Practice. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillor, just a moment. I'll take Councillor Saul.
Madam Mayor, I think this is an issue we need to work in a workshop, please.
So you're moving workshop?
I'm moving into workshop, Madam Mayor.
You're seconding that, Councillor McGinn? Or Councillor Shields? You seconding that? You had your light on.
I will second it. I don't mind. But
Okay.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Okay, it's all right. Your point of order.
Madam Mayor, our Code of Meeting Practice, if we're going to follow it, it does not allow for workshops that's called Committee of the Whole. Could we go to a Committee of the Whole, please?
You want to move into Committee of the Whole, is that correct?
Madam Mayor, I'll put it in a proper sense. I wish to we move into Committee of the Whole.
Thank you, Councillor Saul, and that has been seconded by Councillor McGinn. Do I have any... Shields. Right. Councillor Shields, do we have any dissent on moving into a workshop? A Committee of the Whole. Right. Yes, Councillor Morris, you're dissenting.
And so am I.
Okay. It's been carried that we move into a Committee of the Whole. Just a moment. I have Councillor Shields' light on and I have Councillor Patterson's light on.
Just following the comments from the General Manager, Madam Mayor, just to clarify.
Councillor Shields, can you just
apologies.
Thank you. It's with
clarify. So questions on notice are allowable within the code or under the Code of Meeting Practice. However, what we're practicing is questions without notice, which is not allowable within the Code of Meeting Practice. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to make a few points. First one would be thanking the General Manager for bringing us to the attention that we have been not following our own Code of Meeting Practice, which I think it's fantastic now that we have been shown the proper direction for true transparency. And one of the things I mentioned previously about this questions on notice is that we actually need a filter to stop out those out of order questions that come out in council on live recording that continuously have been thrown by certain members of councils to throw in mud at council and in a defamatory way. But we need to be able to stop that. And the mechanism is, as such, questions on notice.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Given.
Yes, Councillor. Councillor Horval.
Madam Mayor, Councillor Patterson's implying that there have been defamatory questions, and there have been no legally proven defamatory questions put by anyone.
Madam Mayor, I said
no. Just a moment. I'll uphold your point of order.
Yeah, I said that may be asked.
Oh, you said may.
That may be asked by council.
Thank you.
He didn't.
Well, I'm sure that we'll be able to determine that by going back and looking at the recording. So just to be on the safe side, we'll say that you didn't say May,
Okay.
and you can apologise.
I can apologise.
Thank you,
Madam Mayor.
well.
But just furthermore to clarify what I'm trying to get through to, I suppose, our constituents is the fact that questions can and will always be able to be asked to council via the public. I get questions continuously that I can follow through. I send emails to each of the directors or the general manager or sometimes the mayor, and they reply to me with an answer, or they put me in contact with another person in council that can answer those questions. I then relate that answer back to the person who has asked me that question without the need of being recorded on TV or on video. I just find that this is the proper way that we should be conducting our meetings, to show the public that when a question is asked, it's going to be answered in a proper, discreet manner, and those questions that may be asked may need to be filtered at times to stop defamatory questions or questions that are completely out of order. So, thank you, Madam.
Thank you. We are in Committee of the Whole. I'd just like to say that this is really a great opportunity to raise awareness of the information flow between councillors and staff, and understand the code of meeting practice and the real importance of council meetings as the formal place decisions are made. I don't know that we actually have the wording right in
That's where I was going.
I
wanted to go.
So thank you, Councillor Saul, for getting us into committee. I think we can work on that a bit. But from the emails and things that we have received, there appears to be a view that local council meetings are like Parliament, and they're not. Local government does not operate under parliamentary privilege. And in Australia, it's not even embedded in the Constitution. A council meeting is not a parliament sitting. Council meetings are the formal place for decisions to be made. It is not parliamentary question time or a parliamentary inquiry, and that has been suggested by some in the communications that we've received. So clearly there's a lack of understanding by the community of what a council meeting is and about the questions that we're being asked. And we need to ask those questions. Very, very much we need to ask those questions, particularly when we do have the quarterly report, when we have a project, or when there's something that we feel that we are not getting the answers to. However, we always have the opportunity to get those answers prior to a council meeting. And as Councillor Patterson, I think, mentioned in passing, that he's realised through this that Stats and Solve is a really good way of asking the questions. I know when I was first on council, we were allowed 5, this was before the change of the Code of Meeting Practice, which came as a directive from the Office of Local Government, which must have been to tighten up some of those questions. We were allowed 5. I think it started out at 3, and then we were allowed 5. Is that right? So, and in the last 3 years, we've got up to 65 or 70 from one council meeting. So I think it is a really good opportunity that we have now to discuss this. And as we are in committee, I don't know, we need to come to a recommendation. Are we happy with that recommendation? Where do we want to go with this?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor. Yes, General Manager.
Can I just make 2 other comments? It was back in 2007 questions without notice were actually stopped by the Office of Local Government. And we're in this position now largely as a result of me permitting it in the first place. I shouldn't have permitted it in the first place. And we wouldn't be having this debate if I didn't permit it when I first arrived. So, yeah.
Madam Mayor, may I ask a question of the General Manager, please?
After Councillor McGinn, she's been patiently waiting with her light on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, as the General Manager actually just probably said, we started with this custom, but the custom has perhaps gotten out of control. Being a solution-focused person and having moved the recommendation so that we could, discuss this recommendation, I would like to agree with what the Mayor has just said in that perhaps we can reword this recommendation. So I'd like it to be far more positively written, in the sense that at the moment it looks like we're taking a privilege away, but the problem is that we have allowed our custom and practice to grow to a place where it's no longer appropriate because it has been dare I say it, misused, but perhaps that's the wrong word. Maybe just it's grown like topsy. It's gotten out of control. So I would like to suggest, and I haven't got the exact words, but I would like to suggest that we could list perhaps the ways that so first of all, I'd like to suggest that the recommendation be rewritten to say something about council adhering to its code of meeting practice with immediate effect. But then I should like us to maybe list the ways that we can indeed ask questions so that it's clear to ourselves and to the community that in fact there is very open dialogue between councillors and the organisation. So that would be my starting point. Perhaps that we say that start with that council requires the meeting to be conducted in line with council's own code of meeting practice to start with immediate effect. And then perhaps we could list the various ways in which we can communicate with the organisation. So I'd leave it to my fellow councillors to join the dots.
So not limited to, we could list, but yes. Not limited to.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
But I would like to start with perhaps that, so scrap out the one we've got at the moment. We're in workshop, we're able to do that.
Workshop?
Oh, I'm sorry, Committee of the Whole.
Remember that.
So if we can just put the current recommendation to one side and work on that council, or start with something like that council conducts its meetings in lines with its current code of meeting practice with immediate effect, and then we can have some dot points on how, but not limited to, the way we can ask questions of council. And may I just ask if it's possible to get the screen bigger? It's really hard to see the screen. I'm sorry.
There is a limit to how large we can make it, because unfortunately the minute-taking text changes on our screen, so it gets to a point we've got buttons on the whole screen and nowhere to type. The box gets this big, so we can make it a little bit bigger, but not a great deal bigger, unfortunately.
Councillor Horwell, you were next with your light on, and then I'll take Councillor Baxter, and then
Conducts council meetings with council.
Can I start speaking now, Madam Mayor?
yes, Councillor Horwell, I said that, and then I'll take Councillor Baxter after you're finished.
Well, I thought you were going to name some others. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Mr. General Manager, the asking of a question from the floor is actually not bringing any new business to council, is it? At that meeting, I'm talking about.
Yes, it is. It's actually putting it on the record.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's going on the record straight up from that in the minutes.
By simply asking a question, you are introducing new business.
But it's not new business if you ask a question with notice to be answered at the next meeting. Is that what you're saying we are doing?
The current practice is not permitted in the Code of Conduct because it is actually a code of meeting practice, because it is a question without notice and it is therefore not permitted. The proper way is to ask a question on notice, which requires it to be put in writing 8 business days before the meeting is to be held. There is no way around that.
Okay. In a matter of transparency, you're saying this is not reducing transparency. But people who are watching or in the gallery of council will not know what questions are being asked by councillors for information or for answers So isn't that actually reducing transparency? They won't know what's going on?
Not at all, Council. I'm not sure how you come to that conclusion, because you're allowed to actually put in writing your questions, which then go on the agenda with the answers for the public. It's very clear. You just have to ask the questions differently. You do not ask them from the floor. You put them in writing, submit them 8 business days before the meeting. They're included in the agenda with a response. It is open and transparent, and it is in line with the code of meeting practice to ensure that business is not introduced that shouldn't be.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to speak about the elephant in the room. I think the most important reason... Yeah.
Councillor Baxter, I will warn you to be very careful about the elephant in the room, that it doesn't eat you up.
Yeah. The most important reason for discontinuing video questions, I think, is the enormous damage that is being done using this platform. We as councillors are here like the board of directors or the governing body to set policy strategy for the council and help the staff enact it. This valley has suffered years of neglect. We have asked the staff to deliver healthy economic growth, reduce unemployment, give us sustainable development, deliver infrastructure, to give us master plans, address affordable housing. We should be praising the efforts of the staff. They've gained $80 million in grants this year. What we have witnessed in the questions without notice at an ever-increasing amount is antagonism towards the staff, negativity, sniping, bringing the council into disrepute, maligning staff, mudslinging.
Mayor, this is not
Just a moment, Councillor.
Not connected with what we're discussing. It's completely left field.
We're in committee of the whole, Councillor. So I think, but we need to stick to where we're going to go with what we're going to come up with. So yes, Councillor.
We can discuss anything we like then, okay.
No, we can't discuss anything we like, but if it's trying to come to a resolution, that's acceptable. But I will warn Councillor Baxter to keep to the point that we're discussing and trying to get a resolution. But I think your point is around good governance. Is that what you're trying to come to?
Yeah.
That we need a point in there around good governance?
Yeah, and I'm giving reasons.
Thank you.
I'm giving reasons why we should support the motion that removes the videotaped questions. In the June meeting, a question referred to the General Manager and the Mayor as dictatorial and fascist.
That did not happen.
Then, at every meeting since then, where there have been questions given, why this defamatory question was not written up in the business paper, despite it being called out of order and breaching the code of conduct.
Not defamatory.
Trying to say is that this is why one of the examples of why there is a directive from the Office of Local Government and why this is our code of meeting practice that we've been breaching, and in the interest of good governance, you see that it is important that we
to avoid all of this
that we do support the report that has been given by the General Manager, but with word change.
To avoid defamatory statements, that's right, Chair.
Potentially.
Some questions that have been given on the questions without notice, such as unasked questions being answered, or questions being unaddressed, or why wasn't the sites for the Southwest Rocks Library given when I asked for them? Even though a 2-page answer was given in the April meeting, we get relentless questions on why, which these mistakes on the website, publicly broadcast at the council, at the questions without notice. A couple of mistakes on the website, publicly broadcast, unnecessary. I've been told I have sent 670 emails to the executive this year. I've sent 65 customer service requests this year about potholes and signs and bins and everything. Via private emails and customer service requests, I endeavour to help the staff enact the policies and the strategies of that we are responsible for. If I have an issue with the executive, I speak to them privately. I ring them up, right, and we discuss it privately. I do not publicly broadcast it across the video, as it would be detrimental to the council's reputation. We need multi-million-dollar investment into this valley to help the valley prosper. Will investors come to this valley if they witness this antagonism, this name calling, this point scoring, and bringing the council into disrepute? Not only should the negativity of certain questions not be televised, it should disappear from even the questions on notice. We should be helping this valley prosper and attract investment. Don't use questions on notice as a venue to score points. The 200 people, the average is 200 people watch the screened council meeting per month. 200 people might read the business paper. If you look at the views, people that have viewed it.
Views, not viewing live. So where are you coming to?
But if I can make the point, I think the 17,000 voters, not 200, the 17,000 voters out there are more interested in us delivering a higher standard of living for them, guarantee them a job, deliver the infrastructure they need for this valley to prosper. If we, the governing body, work together with the staff and deliver that, then I don't think you need worry about scoring points in a televised question and answer session, and you don't need to worry about being re-elected. The voters will re-elect you because you've delivered on what we've said, the strategies. It says in the Act that the role of a councillor is to represent the collective interests of the residents and ratepayers, to uphold the policies and decisions of the governing body. That's us. And it says about the governing body that as a group, as a board of directors, quote, we should consult with the general manager in directing and controlling the affairs of the council, not ask antagonistic, sniping questions, but consult. I phone the general manager, the directors, I email them, I work with them, not against them. So I think more to the point about following the code of business, code of meeting practice, I think a lot of damage has been done by the negative questions that we've witnessed in that televised questions without notice. So I fully support the general manager's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. No, that was Councillor Baxter. Right. I haven't got anything. Now we are awake. So what I am interested in is getting back to is what we're going to do as a recommendation. I just like to say that one of the reasons I didn't support the amendment was to have it for the next term of council is there are going to be new councillors on council. I would not like to see us go into a new council not following our code of meeting practice. Those new councillors won't have the background. There is one question I'd like to ask to the general manager though. And I don't know if it wasn't in the report, if there was an increase of the questions asked from the floor since the now live streaming of the council meetings.
Yeah, don't have that information at all.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Shields.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with you that we should be dealing with it now and not waiting for a new term of council. We've got an issue, we have to deal with it, so let's not put it off. Questions without notice, how we were practicing. Obviously, you're waiting 30 days or 20-something days for a response anyway. It wasn't an overly effective way of getting a question answered. However, it was in writing and it was for the general public to see. Councillors were lucky to have that privilege for the amount of time that we've had, but it seems that that privilege has been taken advantage of. It's become an unprofessional reflection on council. There are sometimes vexatious questions that are out of order. There are sometimes questions that are personal. There are sometimes questions about questions, and there are sometimes repetitive questions. So it's not an efficient or an effective way for council to do business. So I'm in agreement with Councillor McGinn's resolution that council requires questions on notice to adhere to its own code of meeting practice, and we do that with immediate effect. My question to the General Manager at the end of this, though, is if we move into questions on notice, how it should be according to the code, are we able, obviously those questions we vetted for vexatious questions that are out of order, but are we able to also vet them for questions about questions and repetitive questions and personal questions so that, again, it's not becoming basically a drain on council's resources and time?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, certainly, and that's the intent of the way the Code of Meeting Practice was set up, was to allow questions on notice to be submitted and notice of motion to be submitted, but for those to be reviewed to ensure that there is a filter put across them that ensures they're not defamatory, ensures they're relevant to the business of council, and that they aren't going to take a lot of resources from council. Talking to my colleagues across the region here from Clarence, Port Macquarie, they are astounded at the number of questions we have, given they have maybe one or two and often no questions on notice at all at any council meeting. What we're doing here is, I've never seen it in 26 years in local government, where we have the level we do here. So there is a process in place, and looking at what Councillor McGinn has started at, council conducts meetings in line with code with immediate effect. You may want to add things that councillors can present notices of motion in line with clause 310 of the Code of Meeting Practice. Councillors can present questions on notice in line with clause 314 of the Code of Meeting Practice. They are the formal ways to put things on the agenda. Outside of that, the code allows for other questions to be asked on items that are already on the business paper and in debate, which is what you already do. That doesn't need to be put in there.
McGinn.
Madam Mayor, I was just noticing what Manager of Governance has put on the screen, and that looks to be a very effective way of communicating how we should be asking questions on notice into the future. So if councillors could quickly look at that, that looks to be a really good way to move forward, I would suggest.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just taking Councillor McGinn's point that she made earlier, I've placed 4 points on the screen which summarise what councillors are entitled to do under the Code of Meeting Practice. So that takes on board Councillor McGinn's point about putting it in a positive frame about what councillors can do rather than a negative one of what they cannot.
Thank you, I do like that, the interest of good governance, because really this is around good governance as well as the information flow. There's two parts to this, and it's also, for me, being the chair, it's also understanding that what a council meeting is. Why do we have a council meeting? We have a council meeting to make decisions on behalf of the community. Councillor Williams, and then I'll take Councillor Saul.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just had a quick question. I, for one, voted the other way to defer it until the next term of council because I actually won't be one of those councillors. But this is obviously not going to change the fact that a new council could potentially change the Code of Meeting Practice going forward and add a local clause anyway.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the regulation and the directive from OLG is very clear that questions without notice is not permitted. So a new council could not introduce that as a clause.
Question, Mr. General Manager. At the moment,
just a moment, Councillor Holbrook. I'm going to take Councillor Saul and then we'll come back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to speak on the issue just very briefly, please. I wish to commend the Manager of Governance. This is truly a well thought out way forward. And if we do intend to support this. I think it may give the public reassurance that we are very transparent, we very much have them in minds, and their needs for information are given. Madam Mayor, as a councillor, we are often asked questions on the streets or by emails. And what we have done in the past is emailed staff, the GM, and got a prompt response. So most of the times, our actions as councillors with the public are in the situations where we do email or ring our questions into the staff and respond in a timely manner. In fact, this morning I did the same thing as well. I had a constituent email me on their matter. I passed it along to the director, and no doubt we'll have an answer very shortly. Those things are practical in their nature, and that's what the community is seeking. They want simple answers to their questions and their concerns. And by doing it in this situation, and as we are doing it now, I think the majority are well satisfied that they are being heard and they are being respected. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Saul. Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to query what the General Manager just said. He might clarify what he meant to say. At the moment, the questions that are being asked, Mr. General Manager, at council meeting that have been going on ever since I was elected to council, are questions that are being asked at a council meeting to be answered at the next council meeting. Why do you call them questions without notice when they're actually giving a month's notice?
Yeah, through Madam Mayor, I've called them that because they're actually put on the public record as they are actually asked. So therefore they are without notice. A question with notice allows for the question to be considered to see whether it's actually an appropriate question or not and an appropriate response to be given. And the Code of Meeting Practice is very clear that a question on notice must be submitted in our case 8 business days beforehand. So in effect, our current practice is quite clearly questions without notice.
Okay.
Yes, Councillor McGinn.
Given we're in workshop.
Yeah, no, given that we're in committee.
Committee of a whole, and given the enormous numbers of people who have tuned in to watch this live, for the benefit of the community, I thought we should also add that there is a number of informal ways to communicate. And I don't suggest that this goes in the recommendation, but just for completeness, there are a number of informal ways in which we communicate with the General Manager and his team, and that being we have formal weekly email updates that are of, they're very fulsome, and we get a lot of information in that weekly report from the organisation. We also have General Managers briefings twice a month and ad hoc if there's anything in particular we need to know about. We can submit operational questions via Snap Send Solve, which was what Councillor Patterson was referring to. And I think probably one of the things that is often overlooked is if you form a good, trusting and respectful relationship with the team, there's always the text message or telephone call or informal email. And when you form a respectful relationship with the staff, you are able to ask all the questions that you need to. So, that is the way a lot of us operate, and therefore that's why there haven't been a lot of questions in the meeting at the end of the meeting, because we've formed respectful relationships. So I just wanted to add that as a bit of conversation, if I might.
Thank you. I think we need to look at the recommendations that we've got in front of us and to see if Councillor Horval may. Yes, Councillor Horval?
Madam Mayor, just to clarify, some people might be taking the implication from what Councillor McGinn just said that some councillors do not ask questions informally, directly to directors or the General Manager. Well, I, for one, do many questions. I actually sent 2 emails to Director Fish yesterday about a matter. I'm always asking questions formally, but there's a difference between asking a question that can be dealt with by individual staff or a question that is being asked on behalf of a community member. And questions that come to me from community members, I can tell you a couple of them, one came from upriver, where both his parents died from cancer. And he asked me, what is the water quality? Could the water quality of the Macleay River have caused his parents' death? And so I put questions on notice in relation to that. And because of so many people upriver were interested, and those questions were answered excellently. It was actually front page news, in my opinion, of how good the water quality is that council is providing to people in the upriver area. That question was asked on behalf of the community. I didn't ask it for myself. It was asked because the community wanted an answer. So there's a whole lot of things like that where people come to you and ask questions that they want answered on behalf of the community, and I put them up. And that's what I think is my job. So the implication that I only ask questions somehow myself, Madam Mayor, I don't believe that's correct. I ask a whole series of questions in a whole lot of different ways.
Thank you. I think we need to get back to where we're going to go. I'm going to read out what we've got in front of us so that we can just see if we're okay with that and massage it. It is now 10:30. Not that this deserves any amount of time that we need, but we did start off with a recommendation from the General Manager that basically wanted us to go back to using our code of meeting practice. So what we've got now is that council conducts meetings in line with its own code of meeting practice with immediate effect. That in accordance with the code of meeting practice with immediate effect, one, councillors may be, by way of notice submitted in writing at least 8 days before the meeting is to be held, ask a question for response by the General Manager about the performance or operation of the council. The General Manager or their nominee may respond to a question with notice submitted in this manner by way of a report included in the business paper for a relevant meeting of the council or orally at the meeting. Well, I think that's a good thing. So, and that's straight from the Code of Meeting Practice. In the interest of good governance and to ensure the public are aware of all matters to be dealt with at the meeting and are afforded to the opportunity to participate in the decision-making process as permitted by the Code of Meeting Practice, questions are not accepted verbally from the floor of a meeting. Nothing in the previous clause prevents a councillor from providing a notice in writing as a council meeting to be included on the agenda of the next ordinary council meeting. So what are we saying there? Is that important that we have that point? So I can't see up any further. Is there any further? That's it. Do you want to speak to that?
So through you, Madam Mayor, the last point, nothing in the previous clause prevents council from providing notice in writing. That's really allowing the notices of motion. The Code of Meeting Practices allows a notice of motion and a question on notice under clauses 310 and 314.
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor, further to that. What point 4 is pointing out is currently, as Councillor Horville has pointed out, at a council meeting at the end, we have traditionally taken questions from the floor that are asked, and then they're given a month to answer. I'm pointing out that in point 4, nothing stops that same question from being given in writing on that day. So if a councillor is sitting at the table here and a question occurs to them during the meeting that they would like to ask on notice, they don't have to wait until 8 days prior to the next meeting to ask it. They could submit that in writing on that very day if they wished. It's just not asked orally at the meeting and not part of the stream. It can still be asked at the meeting, it just won't be read out.
Which will enable council staff to deal with the question and provide the answer in a timely manner. I think that's a great idea.
Well, let's just be really clear on that. So what Mr. Thorogood's saying is that if you have a question while you're at the council meeting or prior to it, please put it in writing at the end of the meeting. Please give it to us at the end of the meeting. That is what's being said there. And then we will take it from there. If you are looking at using the questions on notice as per clauses or notice of motion in 310 and 314, I, as previously, would encourage councillors to submit them as early as possible so we can actually have enough time to provide proper and considered responses to those. That's one of the things, if we're getting them right on that 8 days, if it's a complex matter, it makes it very difficult for us to give you a proper response. So the more notice we get, the easier it is for us to provide you with the information you're actually after.
Can I just clarify too, and then I'll take Councillor Shields. So when, for instance, the way I generally ask questions is directly, not at a council meeting, knowing that that's not the code of meeting practice. But when there's something that is for the benefit of everybody to know, it is put into our councillor weekly updates. And generally speaking, a councillor has the ability to share that with whomever they choose if it's not in confidential. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's really, Madam Mayor, where we do get questions that we think are relevant to all the councillors, we include them in the updates and get that information out where we can. And where items are, need to be kept confidential, we try and make that quite clear that they are confidential matters as well.
So rather than wait, if I had a question tomorrow, to get the answer and to get that back to a constituent, I don't have to wait a month. I can do it in a timely fashion. Councillor Shields.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Before we move out of committee of the whole, it just feels clunky. Like the community, the resolution appears a bit clunky at the moment. Obviously, the community needs clarity on this. There's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding, and I admit, as a councillor, I've learned a lot today about the official processes here and what we were not doing correctly. Maybe we could start off with a point 1, that council no longer permits questions on notice to be asked from the floor of the council meeting, as this contravenes council's code of meeting practice. Maybe we just explain that's why we can no longer do what we have been doing. And maybe then a point 2 with Daniel's 1, 2, 3, 4, that in accordance with the code of meeting practice with immediate effect, and maybe call them A, B, C, D or something like that. And then maybe a third point to say, like what Councillor McGinn had said, that there are other readily available avenues to ask questions. These include, and we list off a few. What about, just to try and clarify it a bit for the community, that we're not trying to take something away.
Could it be
we're
wording
not
like
reducing transparency. We're following the code, and there are many other ways that we can communicate with council and the community that is in accordance with our code of meeting practice.
Could one of them be the wording of like that if the public, not if, the public can always ask questions of council and councillors? Well, our process. Yeah.
Can you just you haven't got that in writing? You have got that in writing?
That council no longer permits questions on notice to be asked from the floor, as this contravenes council's code of meeting practice. And then 3 is something like what Councillor McGinn had before. What was that first part of it? That
how about councillors note? Councillors note that there are a number of informal communication avenues afforded to council when to ask questions of the organisation.
There are other readily available methods, such as. I don't think we need the informal avenues bit. I think we just such as.
Such as councillor briefings. I mean, we ask a lot of questions in those councillor briefings. They are the general manager's briefings to council. They are really a very generous time of coming from the general manager and staff. And when we attend those, we do ask lots of questions. Very informative process. So it's certainly worth mentioning the general manager's briefings. I'd just like to back up what Anna's said. At the moment, there is a sense that something's being taken away. There is a perception from the community that, with the original wording, that something was being taken away, a privilege was being taken away. And actually, I do commend the 40-odd people who did email councillors. But I think they were probably slightly misinformed, because it did sound like the community or those that emailed us did think something was being taken away. Although we're spending a lot of time on this and we're saying the things we already do, I think it is important that we let the community know that in fact there are many avenues of communication and that there is no privilege being taken away here.
Would taking away the no longer still achieve the same outcome? The council permit questions on notice from the floor, like from the rest of it. Just if you got rid of no longer, that's not taking away.
I think it's just acknowledging that we have been calling it questions on notice, but it's really questions without notice. Yeah. It's just to try and clarify to the community, this is what we have been doing and we're no longer going to do that because it contravenes our code of meeting practice.
Let's look at this. That in accordance with the Code of Meeting Practice with immediate effect, that Council no longer permits questions on notice to be asked from the floor of Council meeting, as this contravenes the Council's Code of Meeting Practice. I think that explains why. I would like that first.
Yeah, and then the immediate effect goes in there.
But they were never questions on notice. They were questions without notice.
So what you're saying is you want that Council no longer permits questions without notice to be asked from the floor.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah. I think to be clear, the reason we've called it that is it was always labelled in the agenda as questions on notice. Like we're acknowledging that they were being placed on the record without notice. So you need to read that in conjunction with we no longer permit questions on notice to be asked from the floor of the meeting. That all goes together in one point.
Okay. From the floor of the council meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. That in accordance with the Code of Meeting Practice with immediate effect. A councillor may, by way of... So you're happy with the last bit, Councillor Shields and everyone? I haven't got any lights on, so I imagine that, yes.
Move into open council.
Thank you, Councillor Shields. Is moving that we go back into open council. Do I have a second? Yes, Councillor McGinn. Any dissent going back into open council? No. So is this, we're going to take us an amendment.
She accepts it, becomes the motion.
Oh, you're going to accept it?
Yes, so I moved the recommendation originally, Madam Mayor, for the purpose of having full debate.
So you're going to accept this in?
Yes.
And who was the seconder? Councillor Patterson, you don't have to agree. Okay, so we now have a resolution. A recommendation. Do you wish to speak to it? No, you don't. Okay, Councillor Horval. I can't hear you, Councillor Horval. You reserve your right. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, on page 16 of the Code of Meeting Practice, it says order business for ordinary council meetings. Mr. Thorogood just brought this up. It's item 10, notices, motions, questions with notice. That's in our order of business. If we pass this motion that is being put up, we are changing the Code of Meeting Practice. Could I have a response to that? Legally, are we actually changing our Code of Meeting Practice with this motion?
The answer is no, we are not. That item on the agenda will actually contain, as it has previously, any notices of motion, and it will also contain the questions on notice that are submitted in line with the Code of Meeting Practice. So there is no change to the Code of Meeting Practice.
So in the order of business, there's going to be questions with notice, but we're not going to be able to say them out loud. Is that what you're saying?
No, Councillor Horval, what we're saying is that that is where if you submit a question within 8 days of the council meeting, your question and response will appear in that part of the agenda.
Well, it's actually not the agenda that I'm talking about. It's the order of business for an ordinary council meeting. That's what it says. It's not talking about the agenda, Mr. General Manager.
Okay, in your business, that does not change. It is still a question on notice.
With notice, it says.
In line with the meeting practice, And then in the business paper, under that heading, that is where those items will appear. It's quite simple.
I don't agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I've got no lights on. I've got no hands up. Okay.
I'll speak, Madam Mayor, if I may.
You're reserving your right, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, Councillor Horval.
I'd like to speak against this motion that's before us, Madam Mayor. Is that okay? Thank you.
Yes, you're entitled to speak.
Okay. Well, the General Manager has put his point of view and he says we're breaking the code of meeting practice at the moment. I will respectfully disagree with him because my interpretation is obviously opposite to what he has said. He has said that 3.14, which says a councillor may, by way of notices submitted under clause 3.10, ask a question for response. So that's what 3.14 says. When it refers to 3.10, 3.10 says a council may give notice of any business they wish to be considered by the council at its next ordinary meeting. So asking a question with notice at a council meeting is giving notice for the next council meeting. It is not, I repeat, not business before the present council. So we've already got there. We're not breaking that. We're actually giving notice of a question to be answered at the next council meeting. We're giving notice. And that's what 3.10 in relation and in conjunction with 3.14 is saying. You've got to give notice of the question. And up to 8 days or before is also there. But it's the fact that we're giving notice. We're actually not bringing new business to be considered at the council meeting when we give a question with notice. And that's what we've been doing. And I did not think at any time, I did not think at any time that we were infracting the code of meeting practice by asking questions at the council meeting, which is part of the code of meeting practice. And again, I respectfully disagree with the General Manager's view that we're not changing the code of meeting practice. We are. We ban questions with notice at a council meeting, which is on the order of business of council, and you cannot actually ask the question at that council meeting. Then you are not. Is that?
Oh, wait. Keep going, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just trying to make the simple point. I disagree with the General Manager, and I believe in a democracy. I can disagree with anyone, including the General Manager, and I hope he understands that I'm not doing it disrespectfully. I just come from a different interpretation of what the code of meeting practice reads as is. We are giving notice. That's what asking in 3.10. It's not creating new business. It's actually asking for business, which is answering the question, to be brought up about 30 days later on the agenda of the next council meeting. So it's giving notice of the business. And I also respectfully disagree with quite a few people who are saying that the questions that are being asked at the moment are bringing council into disrepute. The questions on notice are giving people in the community issues that they want answered being asked on their behalf. And almost always, those are the questions I've asked, and I think other councillors have been asking, on behalf of other people who want to know this information that's going to be put on the public. And it's on the public by asking at the council meeting, and then it comes out in the agenda of the next meeting. Another example, I was approached by disabled people, about the new bridge, Back Creek Bridge at South West Rocks. And they were concerned about getting a wheelchair access to the other side of the creek there. So I asked questions on behalf of them, and it came back that the answer was that that was allowed because it had been put to the disability people. I asked a question on their behalf, and we got the answer. That's what we're supposed to do. We represent the community. We do not represent what the image of council is. We represent the best part of democratic involvement of people in how we decide things and how we get information. And I oppose totally what's being put up. We should maintain the custom and practice and also the letter of the law of the Code of Meeting Practice, which is give notice of your questions at the council meeting to be answered at the next council meeting.
Can I just, General Manager, those examples that Councillor Horville used, would he have been able to ask those under the Code of Meeting Practice and not just from the floor?
Yes, correct, Madam Mayor.
Can you just explain what your perception is of this?
Councillor Hall is entitled to his opinion. I happen to obviously clearly disagree, and the Office of Local Government clearly disagrees with that position. The Code of Meeting Practice is very clear that questions on notice are to be put in writing. They can't be asked verbally. As soon as you ask verbally, as we have been doing, you are putting business before council. It is on the public record. The idea is to put it in writing so it can be considered prior to the meeting, prior to it being put on the public record. So every councillor has the ability to still raise any of the questions they have in the last 3 years. They simply need to follow the Code of Meeting Practice, which requires them to be put in writing. In addition to that, and I'd encourage the councillors to actually read sections 310 to 314 of the Code of Meeting Practice, because it outlines the process for notices of motion. It outlines the way councillors can withdraw those notices of motion as well. It outlines the responsibilities I have as the General Manager in considering these have been put to me by councillors. And it outlines the responsibilities I also have in relation to notices of motion that come in that would raise the potential for the expenditure of funds. The code is quite clear. You cannot, under the code, the way it is written, ask a question from the floor because it is a question without notice, which is not permitted at all.
Okay, Councillor McGinn, do you wish to close debate?
I'm happy to close debate, Madam Mayor. I think we've really given this a good flogging. I'm really happy with the recommendation as it comes, as we've developed it. I think this is a matter about not just following our Code of Meeting Practice as we should, but it's a matter of good governance, and good governance is good government, and it's certainly following on being an open and transparent democratic organisation. I would like to commend the motion to my fellow councillors.
Now, during that, Councillor Morris put up his hand, so I don't know. But I did ask for close of debate because I did ask, was there any other lights? I can't hear you, Councillor Morris. You need to put your microphone on.
I actually put my hand up just before Councillor McGinn started to speak, but because I wanted to make a comment. But obviously, even though she reserved a right, so I accept that if I can't speak, I can't speak.
Well, thank you, Councillor Morris. It may be the technology delay in bringing that up. I did think I waited enough time. I'm going to put any dissent on the recommendation. There's 2 dissent on the recommendation. That will come up on the board, and then that will be carried, and we will all have a break for morning tea until 11:10. A call to order, councillors. We're resuming the council meeting.
This one.
We're on 9.5, which is the...
Move that way, Madam Mayor. Bushfire.
Oh, actually, Councillor McGinn said... Okay, so it's been moved by Councillor Saul, seconded by Councillor McGinn. Everyone else is here. Councillor Hall.
Madam Mayor, I withdrew this item to speak to it and ask some questions, of course. Can I ask the questions first, please?
I just ask Councillor Saul, does he wish to speak first, or reserve his right, and then certainly.
Madam Mayor, I was right to speak at the end.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The news of the grant of $6,331,001, that's an interesting number, is fantastic, and it's 100% of what we're going to be doing there. Could you be able to, has anyone determined how long this will take to complete and all that money be spent?
Through you, Mr. Mitchell.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Horville, some of the timeframes will still be to be confirmed, only because we're waiting on receipt of the funding deed for us to then execute it. That said, we're kicking off the project from a planning perspective this week with our first formal project control group meeting. The timeframes roughly that we're working for is that we'd have the design and procurement phases completed by the end of this financial year, so by 30 June 2022, with then an aim to have the actual construction completed by the end of the next financial year, so by 30 June 2023. So in essence, we're sort of saying sort of about 20 or so months from now, if we get the funding deed and then can get the project started. That's the sort of time frame. There's obviously some variables in that in terms of we've obviously got to go through the design phase, as I indicated, and also procurement and actually sort of go through those actual phases. So timeframes can move around, but at a high level, and just to give you an indication, that's what we're working towards at this stage.
Thank you. So will that committee consider whether going through a design and construct tender would be a quicker way of doing it, or is that not, or is it just going to be separate tenders for each item?
That'll all be decided at the first project control group meeting, Councillor Hall, in terms of the approach.
Would design and construct be a more efficient and timely way of doing it?
I can't answer that at the moment, Councillor Hall, because I need to take advice from other members of the project control group. The project control group obviously includes key council staff members, but will also include the lessee, quite importantly. So those decisions will be discussed as part of that governance structure that we'll be putting in place.
Is the intention that the Saleyard will continue to operate at a full capacity while this is going on, or is it going to have to be reduced in some way?
The intention is that we're trying to minimise the impacts on the Saleyards as much as possible. Obviously, it's a place of business and plays an important role within the Shire. And so the planning phase will obviously be considering that, and the way the work will be structured will be to minimise any of those impacts as much as possible. And that's why it's critically important to have the lessee as part of the project control group meeting, so that we can minimise those impacts. A lot of that was already catered for, allowed for in terms of the lease agreement, and so we've sort of got reasonable level plans in terms of how we'll do that. But obviously that needs further consideration as we start to get into the project, and there's a lot of work to happen before we actually get to the actual construction phase where those impacts would need to be managed. Okay,
is this grant already in the present operating plan, or has it got to be added at the next quarterly review?
I'll take that question on notice. I think it's actually included, Councillor Horville, would be my understanding. I'll just confirm that and provide an update to all the councillors in terms of the time across the long-term financial plan.
So when this design is come up by the control group that you're talking about, Director Mitchell, will there be the designs be put out for further public consultation or advice from the users on what can be changed or improved?
No, that wouldn't be the intention, Councillor Hall, because the grant application that we submitted had high-level plans and a QS that was done to support those. So what's actually been included and what the grant funding deed will refer to is fairly sort of clear in relation to those aspects. The most important person obviously to be consulting with is obviously the lessee who will have operational management of the SALEYARD. So that's why the project control group from a governance perspective is an important governance structure for us to have.
Thank you. Finally, the high level plans you just spoke about, have they been given or shown to councillors in a briefing? Because I can't remember having seen any.
I can't recall. We did provide some information to councillors around the grant application. So, Councillor Hall, for your benefit, so Councillor Shields has just reminded me that we did provide an overview as part of a councillor update in terms of what the grant would cover and what would be included. We didn't provide the copies of the plans to councillors, actually on the basis that it was more detailed planning would need to occur and it was largely operational.
Right. That's another thought that you're talking about what can happen. Some of the feedback I get from people at the SALEYARDS is over the years is one of their biggest complaints is the fact that they've got to go so far to the amenities block, which is quite away from where the auction's going. Could that amenities block that's going to be constructed be prioritised to be completed as soon as possible for the benefit of the buyers and sellers?
Councillor, that will be part of the plan, which will be, and the sequencing of any of the works will be take into account a whole number of factors, and so again, that these are decisions that and items that will need to be worked through as part of the project control group. The main aim for us is to deliver the project in accordance with the grant funding deed, and in terms of the timeframes that we'll commit to, and most importantly, to minimise the impact on the operation of the SALEYARDS. And so that will be our primary objective. So I think that all of those considerations will be taken into account. Again, as I mentioned before, some of that intel, if you like, will come from having representation of the lessee on the project control group. And so we're very confident that we'll actually have a good representation of the users of the SALEYARDS coming into the project control group by actually having the lessee on that control group.
Excellent.
Can I just want to read the resolution of what we're discussing here, that council authorise the general manager to enter into a funding deed under the bushfire local economic recovery funding for a substantial infrastructure upgrade of the regional SALEYARDS or not. So that's the recommendation, whether we authorise him to enter into this funding deed. And that has been moved by Councillor Saul and seconded by Councillor McGinn. You had another question, Councillor Hall?
No, Madam Mayor, I wanted to speak in favour of it, if I
may. The mover hasn't spoken in favour. He's reserved his right. Do you wish to speak in favour?
I just want to applaud Council, Madam Mayor.
Firstly, and then I'm sure other councillors may want to add their points to as well. Madam Mayor, this is an exciting day. For this Shire to have such a capital injection into our local SALEYARDS is fantastic. I commend all those who are involved, from the council staff to the government, because this is something that for many, many years, SALEYARDS committees and SALEYARDS operators, users and sellers have for. And now closer and closer to seeing it happening in real. I mean, Madam Mayor, the importance of health to our animals and to our users is vital. And to see this
I
yard...
don't want to be unfair, but point of order, aren't we actually, sorry, Councillor Saul, but aren't we actually talking about the general manager signing the deed? Do we have to go all over the SALEYARDS again?
The context all.
No, we don't. And you're actually correct to keep us on track, Councillor McGinn. That is right.
I thought it was a good point to bring up.
I just thought it was a point, contact.
If Councillor Saul would just like to.
But I want to keep my back to my comments back. Madam Mayor, but you know the history, and it's very welcomed. So the point I'm saying is,
let's sign the deed.
A thank you to those involved to see this actually happening, from all those in the past who have fought so hard, and to see it realised. So, General Manager, I hope you can sign this as soon as possible. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Horville was going to speak for it, and it would need to be speaking for the fact that we want the General Manager to sign the funding deed. You can be brief, Councillor.
I was going to be brief, Madam Mayor. And first of all, I'd like to thank Director Mitchell for his fulsome answers to the questions I put. I commend the project control group in being implemented from the council, the general manager authorising this to go into the funding deed. And of course, it will certainly add to the animal welfare with shade and better footing for them. And it's going to make it more amenable to the buyers and sellers. So this is a great outcome for Kempsey Shire, and I commend the fact we've got this wonderful grant, and it's 100% funding, which we really like when it's 100%. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any dissent on the recommendation, councillors? No dissent has been carried unanimously. We now go to item. Do I have a mover to go into confidential? Thank you, Councillor Saul. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Patterson. All in favour of going into confidential? Thank you. We now need to clear our one community member that has joined us and stayed with us the whole morning. Thank you, Paul.
In regards to the matters considered in closed session on item 11.1, legal matters, Council resolved that the information be noted. Thank you.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor.
We also considered 11.2 and 11.3 in the consensus motion. So surely the resolution that was adopted by Council for both of those should be read out as well. So
thank you, Councillor
is
Morris.
aware of what was resolved in those other matters.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Continue, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. In regards to item 11.2 TQE 21/20, supply and delivery of pavement materials, Council resolved that Council accept the following tenders as a panel supply contract for the supply and delivery of pavement materials in accordance with the tender documentation and tender submissions for a period of 2 years commencing 27 September 2021 and concluding 27 September 2023. A. Arnway Proprietary Limited. B. Balls Earth Moving Proprietary Limited. C. Bayvale Proprietary Limited, Valley Quarry. D. Boral Resources Country Proprietary Limited. E. George McEwen Earth Moving Proprietary Limited, trading as GME Civil Construction. F. Pacific Blue Metal Proprietary Limited. In relation to item 11.3, Anderson Quarry, sale of land, Lot 1, deposited plan 513573 off Loftus Road, Council resolved that Council 1 offer for sale Lot 1 deposited plan 513573 at the value determined by Council's consulting valuer in his report dated 23 June 2021, reference 107-51582. 2. Pursuant to Section 377 of the Local Government Act 1993, delegate authority to the General Manager to A. Sign the agency agreement with Council's appointed real estate agent. B. Negotiate with the highest bidder if Lot 1 deposited plan 513573 does not attain the value recommended by Council's consulting valuer in his report dated 23 June 2021, provided that in the opinion of the General Manager the highest bid received represents the best return to Council. C. Sign the contract for the sale of land. D. Sign the Land Registry Services transfer document.
Thank you very much. Thank you, councillors. That concludes this September 2021 meeting of Council.